Hi all, and welcome to Opera Orlando's Black Artists, Black Stories pilot episode. The series features interviews, reflections, and panel discussions from Black artists in the world of opera, part of our Representation Matters campaign. I am your host, Chevalier Lovett, and I proudly serve as a board member for Opera Orlando. We are excited to launch this campaign, a series of episodes with meaningful discussion, storytelling, and conversations around inclusivity in hopes of growing as a company and as a community. We look forward to highlighting all community voices throughout our season via the Representation Matters initiative with Latinx artists, Latinx stories, Asian artists, Asian stories, and LGBTQ+ artists, LGBTQ+ stories. Now, on to the episode. I speak with tenor Nathan Granner, Metropolitan Opera National Council winner and founding member of the Sony Masterworks recording group, the American Tenors. Make sure to catch him with Opera Orlando this season as a soloist for Opera on Park, as well as making his main stage debut as Don Jose in Carmen. We discuss how Nathan got into opera, his experience with representation in the arts, and his vision for the future of opera. Nathan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Chev. It's such a pleasure being here and being in the Opera Orlando family and the community. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled.
I'm going to start us off, in this conversation, and I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, but
sure.
I want you to feel free to add in and chime in on anything you want, right?
Yeah.
The first thing for me is, what got you into opera? As a person of color, it's not a huge field for folks of color to go to. And so, but what made you fall in love with the art form? Why did you particularly get into it?
Well, what I will relay to you, one of the seminal moments that I had in opera. Now, my upbringing is I'm an Iowan. I was born in Chicago. My folks got divorced when I was really super young, so I didn't know my dad. We moved to Iowa, and I spent my formative years in a very, very small town, going to a Presbyterian church. But I did go to church, and I actually learned how to sing listening to my adopted dad sing in the choir there. So I've always kind of been around music in the church, and going up to his parents' house, they had a couple of Pavarotti records. And they'd play the Pavarotti records, and I'd be like, wow, that's amazing. And it wasn't until way later in my senior year in high school, when I was about 17 years old, a voice teacher came in to do a master class. I started taking lessons. She's like, you've got something. I applied for scholarships. I got them. All of a sudden, I'm in opera.
Wow.
And I didn't know anything about it. So one day I was at Kansas State University, and they were doing a New York City opera touring production of La Boheme. And at the opera, and if you've seen La Boheme, the ending, Mimi dies, and it's just so sad. Well, I hadn't actually seen an opera before. The Mimi was Black, Geraldine McMillan.
Oh.
And,
Okay. Oh my gosh. Like legend. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Love her. I first heard her under the baton of Willie Anthony Waters at Connecticut Opera. She was doing Donna Elvira in Don Giovanni, and let me tell you, the tone, Okay, sorry. Go ahead. I would
No,
love to.
what you're describing is exactly what I felt. And had I known anything about opera other than just going to my voice teacher and existing, I would have been like, what? So fast forward 20, no, 10 or whatever, 11 years later, fast forward 11 years later, I have my first artist contract. I graduated from the Young Artist. I'd gone to Glimmerglass Opera and Wolf Trap. And I finally get to St. Louis Opera in the production of Treemonisha. And this was a remarkable experience. I had never been in an opera with any other person of color, especially Black. It was a minor, thing that I didn't even think about until all of a sudden I was surrounded by Derek Parker. Larry Brownlee was my roommate, Morris Robinson, Christina Clark, and one of my really good friends. We became good friends, and all of a sudden we were driving around St. Louis, and this woman, Geraldine, said, "Oh, I was touring at Bohème, in the 90s or the early 80s or late 80s, early 90s." And I was like, "Wait a minute, did you go to Kansas State University?" She's like, "I think so." And I'm like, "Oh my God." It was my first experience in opera. It was my first experience. So my first experience in opera was with a Black soprano, and we just had such a great time reminiscing about that time. And I got to fanboy. It was really cool.
When you see someone for the very first time on stage that looks like you and sings like you, and it's so funny that you mentioned Treemonisha, right? Which is a Scott Joplin opera, which is absolutely just beautiful, gorgeous.
Amazing.
There's a Houston Grand Opera recording out there with Curtis Ram. And Curtis Ram is local here to Opera Orlando. And
really?
He sure is. And that was the first person of color that I saw on stage that looked like me. In fact, I turned pages for his pianist when he did a recital, right?
Wow.
And so, yeah. And he's local here. And the reason Curtis got his history, you spoke about Pavarotti. Curtis was the go-to tenor in the times that Pavarotti had to call out, right? And so Curtis was the understudy for Pavarotti. I mean, he made his Idomeneo. He made his Met debut Idomeneo because Pavarotti had to call out, and Curtis stepped in. So it's so fun. It's so fun to hear that. And then you said your
world.
Right. Like, so clearly it meant a lot to you to see, a person of color on stage singing. And then you got to do an opera, which is not done frequently, which is an opera out there that is primarily for folks of color, right? I mean, you got to do half. That's right. So how did that shape you into the artist that you are today, and why do you continue to lift the voices of representation of Black folk in opera?
That's a very, very complex and beautiful question, and I'm going to try and unpack that. So why? Okay, so stemming from that experience with St. Louis, Opera Theater St. Louis, and let me just say that the story I'm about to tell it may look bad for OTSL in some respects, but it's not. OTSL has been a fantastic place for artists of every color. They have been out there working hard and trying to create equity and create, a space for Black singers, Black opera singers. So we were doing Treemonisha, and the Scott Joplin play. It's the only remaining Joplin opera that exists. He wrote another one, but we've never been able to unearth it. Well, with all of these Black artists around me, it was such an invigorating, enlivening experience just to not have to have the trappings of just being not not having to be so white, I guess. I don't know. You know, there's a veneer you have to put on. Not only is it in opera a professional veneer, but also being Black, it's like we have a whole different way of feeling and expressing ourselves. I mean, it's not too different, but it is different. And just being allowed to bathe in that, in the opera culture and in the culture, it was amazing. So one day we had a documentarian a documentary group come in, and they were going to do like Black voices or something like this. And a lot of the principal cast, or some, were asked to interview with these documentarians. And I go in there and I'm sitting, and I'm 30 at this point. And that's mature, you know, for a young artist, but also I didn't know anything about like PR or how to like be or how to talk outside, and especially not on camera. So they're like, what do you think about Black artists in opera? And what do you feel about that? And it started off very positive. And then I just kind of started railing, and just, you know, the negativity and the hurt and the fear that I have had for such a long time kind of started spewing out. And I felt horrible about the whole thing. The documentary itself never came out. And and to this day, I just wonder, like, you know, why were we put in a position to just be there when we didn't have there's no prep, there's no like, hey, what we'd like you to do, you know, but we also, as a community, we didn't talk about what it's like. We just were.
Can I, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Please do.
Love that you said that just now, right? When you know, us as artists, as we are who we are, right? This is our skin color, right? And this is who we are. Yeah. And we don't think about it in terms of, well, I have to maneuver it in this way. It's, I just am. This is my being. This is my talent. Right. And you brought up two things that's really important for folks to know within representation: triggers and microaggressions, right? And that we have to go through that and sit in that and then process that more than any other group usually in opera. And so, and as folks are watching the series, I'm hoping that, you know, we're able to educate on terms and definitions and why it particularly, you know, is important to us. So you had a triggering moment, and there was a microaggression that happened. Sorry, I just want to point that out. Go ahead.
No, Chev, that's a great point. The cool thing about Treemonisha, among the many, many amazing things, was that I feel like I was given an opportunity in the first role, my first major role that I had in opera, to be with my people, to be with my community, and learn how to be just there. It's rare to share the stage with any other person of color, and rare to share the stage with another Black person. And when you're talking about how, as an actor, you know, as a singer, you know, you bring these things you bring your experiences to life, to bear on a particular character. And we, like seeing La Boheme, we bounce those tropes off of our culturalism that we bring, what the character brings. So when you're only having like one Black person or one Indian person or one, you know, just to represent, you know, something it's not even as a token, it's just, you know, we're doing an okay job of putting a Black person on stage, but there's no interaction.
But are you?
Right. But are really you? Are you? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So last year we had about this time we had just finished doing the premiere of the Central Park 5 at Long Beach Opera by Anthony Davis. Now Anthony, fantastic composer, great guy, writes some hard music, but he's always chooses themes or operas that are just right there, right on time. Amistad, Malcolm X. So Central Park 5 came out 2 weeks after When They See Us, the Duvernay 4-part Netflix show.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're all in that churn of the five guys, the five exonerated men. And not only was the rehearsal process it was grueling just as far as how to do the music. Like we were singing 5-part harmony, but based on a 12-tone scale. I mean, it was like, it's take 6, but also atonal.
The key of Q.
And we had talked about this at the performance. We finally got to the performance, and it was all one act. So it's just this 90 minutes, just sock you in the face. These young, these teenage boys are arrested. They are interrogated, and they are there for hours and hours without parental support, without legal support at all. And the police there are interrogating them and cajoling them into confessing that they have been part of this brutal rape in Central Park. Right. And so we get through the interrogation scene in the opera. There are 2 interrogation scenes. The first one, and there's kind of like a pause a little bit. We change some scenery. So I go off stage, and we have just done that scene. And I look through the curtain on the side, and there's no one is moving. No one is saying a word. There's no breath. There's no coughing. There's no nothing. It is just stunned silence. I've never seen this on the stage before in all my years. It was amazing. The lights go on after the show, and I'm looking out at this audience, and not only is it an audience of white people, but there are so many Black people that represent, like, this is what representation means to me, and equity. Yeah. Having people of different races and colors sharing stories that are germane to us today. It's fine to sing and be in castle operas, the Mozarts and stuff, but where are the stories of us contemporaneously? Where are those stories? And I think Long Beach Opera has been doing a fantastic job of trying to represent people of color, of all races, all creeds, in addition to doing the early Baroque pieces and whatever. Equity means stories being shared of different cultures who are living in this country, of our fellow citizens.
Thank you so much, Nathan. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you more.
You too. Thank you.
It was great speaking with Nathan. You will see him as a member of our panel discussion. I speak with soprano Brittany Renee, a mainstay of Opera Orlando, having last been seen as the stunning Countess in the 2019 production of The Marriage of Figaro. And she returns this season as Micaela in Carmen. We'll hear how Brittany got into opera, how typecasting impacts the opera industry and plays a part in representation matters, and hear about her vision for the future of opera. tell us your story, your quick story of why you got into opera. What brought you into this field, to this world?
You know, I say this, I've said this when people ask me this question, I feel like I've actually gotten to opera much later. I should say this, I grew up Minnesota. So in Minnesota, you know, it was kind of ingrained, not even ingrained, but I grew up in that whole choral aspect. So I just knew I just loved music. I didn't really know I was going to go into music until, you know, you're in high school trying to figure out like what you want to do with the rest of your life. So my parents were always like, you know, do what you love to do. And I'm like, I like to sing. I like to perform. I like, you know, sharing my soul to other people. I guess that's the thing. And so I didn't know really where that was going to take me. And so I want to say I kind of applied to conservatories and to like liberal arts colleges, and I got into Peabody Conservatory. It was good because also my mom's side is from Maryland, is from Baltimore and like Columbia, Maryland. So it was also good because I also had some family there. And so when I was in college, I think that's when I realized that like, I think I'd already seen an opera when I was 13, but to really dive into the music and the languages, I truly was like, this is absolutely amazing. Like, it could be, I say this, like I'm such a nerd, but I am such a weird, like ancient history kind of buff. It's very crazy. Like, I just love all that stuff. So it's funny, as soon as I like found opera, I was like, oh my God, like this, it's kind of not even this ancient art form, but just this older art form that is so exquisite and exposed, but then also can still relate to, in some cases today, like the stories and such. So it was that. And then when I was like, let's do this. Now, mind you, like I only had like one aria like coming in, and I only had.
Gotta know.
Huh?
What was the aria? We have to know.
The aria was Batti Batti o Bel Mazzetto from Don Giovanni. Yes, it was priceless. It was something where I was like, this is all I got. Okay, let's figure this out.
I bet it was wonderful. I know it was wonderful.
You know, it's funny. It just how you find old recordings in your phone. I think back on like cassette tapes, you know, we didn't have the you know, back in those cassette tapes, I have myself where I listen back to recordings. I'm like, wow, you're so young. Trying to, you know, figure it out. But yeah, like, and it just kind of kept evolving, because the thing is, like, I grew up on like jazz and gospel. My dad's a huge jazz person, and just all of that, you know, enriches. And don't get me wrong, like my Kathleen Battle and my Jesse Norman CDs back in the day were scratched to the point, like I literally was like, Mom, we have to go buy new CDs, because I played those on repeat as well. But as far as for like the performance aspect and production, wasn't even till later. Like I was just like, I'm just gonna keep singing these songs because I love to sing them, but not really knowing the whole background of it, I should say. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I mean, there's so much to unpack, Brittany. I don't even know where to begin. So we talk about representation within the arts, and we, you know, our series is called Black Artists, Black Voices. And, you know, we talk about the representation within the opera world and in the classical world in general, right? And so, you know, do you remember the first time you saw someone that looked like you?
I want to say, because it wasn't like, again, it wasn't until college. And I remember, and I say this, coming from Minnesota, as many people know, Minnesota is 80%, 90% Caucasian. And so the school I went to, I had like my 2, 3, like, you know, close Black friends, and that was kind of it. I had other friends, made great relationships with, but like, that was really it. And so the culture of just being immersed, I should say, with other people that look like me, that are interested in the arts. Because again, you know, growing up, I didn't have all of that. I had to create all these opportunities for myself. Now, of course, after I graduated, Minnesota was like busting open with all of these arts. Like, really? Like,
it always happens like that. Yeah.
Right. After you leave. And so I feel like when I got to Peabody, it was the first time I was surrounded first by people who looked like me, as well as people who love the arts, all types of arts, from orchestral to dance to singing. And so I say this, it wasn't, and I still call her my mentor. She might watch this. Her name, I'm just gonna call it out, Nakia Werner. She was, I think at the time, she was a couple years older than me. And I remember we first had our first kind of, we were in the same studio, and we had our first kind of like studio class, but like for everybody. So it's like all the teachers would come together and their students would sing, and it would be for the whole, vocal student body. And I remember like she sang, I think it was Depuis les jours. My heart melted, melted. And Nakia, if you're listening, like, I know, right? Like, that she could still sing. She lives in Maryland. We still talk. And I say this, like, and if she was not at the time, Kathleen Battle, blah, blah, like, yes, all those women were important. But I do know the first time I heard like a Black woman sing was just actually a student that I was like,
yeah,
like, what? Like, and just understanding like the colors of the voice and how she used the voice. Like, that's the thing that I just gravitated to, because I sat there, I was like, I didn't get that. I got the basic training and understanding of the voice, how to breathe and this and that. But again, like, my voice was very much in flux. Like, you get to college and it's like, I don't really know where I'm supposed to fit in, but I'm just going to keep singing, what I like to sing. But from listening to, somebody who, 4 years older than I am, just sing with her heart and her soul, and to hear all these beautiful timbres like mine, I got so interested. I think that like what drew me in more, because I was like, here is this Black woman, singing this music that it touched everybody. I say that, but to me, where it was like, and there wasn't that many people, again, like maybe, I think at the time there was like maybe six Black women, opera singers, like opera performance majors. And of course later it grew, but yeah.
You brought back a couple things, right? You talked about your church experience, you talked about your jazz experience, and you talked about your love of choral music, which, that's how we learn. I was chatting with Nathan earlier, and we were talking about what equitable standards in opera looks like for Black artists and for folks in general, but for Black artists, right? I shared a story with him that I did this Mozart aria. It so happens to be the Count's aria that I'm going to be your Count one day. I will. I'm just speaking it into existence somewhere. I'm just speaking it into existence somewhere. And I remember singing this aria and doing really well. I win the competition. Then I had someone come up to me and say to me, "Wow, I can't wait to hear you in Porgy and Bess." Now I'm thinking, I just sang this Mozart, and I sang the mess out of this Mozart, and I just won this competition singing the mess out of this Mozart. And the first opera, the only thing that you can come into mind is Porgy and Bess. Not to downplay Porgy and Bess, but it just so happens to tie in our conversation today, because not only did you play in Porgy and Bess, you also did Le Nozze di Figaro as a countess. So why is it that Porgy and Bess is so important, that production that you were in at the Met? Why is it still so important to have that? But why is also playing the Countess at a much smaller opera company like Opera Orlando as equally as important to Black artists?
I say this in many auditions at my school, as well as later in life, I would, because I had that background, I would present those Mozart arias. I would present those Donizetti arias. And it was just, things would just glaze over. Or I would get the questions like, "Oh, that's beautiful. Do you like have a spiritual or something that you could sing?" And I was always kind of like, because I say this, being a token, being the only one sometimes, it's like you can't ruffle feathers, you can't do this, even though you sit there and you're like, but I've worked so hard at my technique in this to actually present this, that you now want to hear something that's not even in my audition package. Nothing against the spiritual. Like, don't get me wrong, like I did it once and sang down to spiritual and was like, now I will go back and sing some Lucia. Like, it's something where it's like, oh, okay, all right, you're gonna listen to this 8-minute aria now. But you know, and that's the thing. And it's hardest because Porgy and Bess is such a beautiful show. It's a beautiful show. And the fact that it was meant and written for Black people, but it's also rarely ever done because of the fact you need all these Black people to do it. So it's absolutely beautiful. But the other thing too is that, you know, as an artist or as Black artists now, we can sing everything else. I mean, that's the thing too, but it's like sometimes you don't get the chance because no one necessarily sees it. They're like, well, we don't see you as the ingenue. We don't see you as the damsel in distress. We don't see you in this, you know, no matter how beautiful you sing down. If not, it might just be one person, not like multiple Black people. So Porgy and Bess was always that outlet to be like, you know, we do have this, and this music is gorgeous. But again, there's a problem with that, is because then, you know, as a singer, you can get, which should not be the case at all, is that Black singers specifically will get pigeonholed into just doing Porgy and Bess. Like, oh, they sing Porgy and Bess. Okay.
What was that experience like, though? Because you got to sing Porgy and Bess at the Met in a time where, because right now we can't ignore that we're going through a revolutionary moment, right? And it's across all facets of all areas, professional folks. We're talking about accountability with those in authority. And we're talking about accountability with those who are in positions of power, like folks who can cast operas, right? But you did that opera in a time where we started bringing up those themes around that. Orion Speedo Green, shout out to him. I went to college with him. You know, and folks who, like yourself, have been activists in the you know, rising of Black artists in opera. How was it being around those folks? LaTanya Moore, right? Like, how was it being around those folks who do the same thing?
Exactly. It was for the first time, and I say this too, not even just for the other principals, but just the whole entire ensemble. There were people that I would sing with at church, you know, or I would know here in the city, or, you know, would have lunch and whatnot, but I'd never been able to work with them because we're all off doing our individual thing. We never could really come together in one show, because it's like, you know, we could go off and, you know, do a, you know, Lakme, or do a Marriage of Figaro, or do other, you know, different things, but it still would only be one of us doing it. And we were always like, why? But at least Porgy and Bess was a time for us to all come together. So when you got, you know, I think the ensemble was close to 60 people, and plus the 10 principals and all the dancers, there was like 90 people on stage. But when you got all these singers together, you realized every single singer was incredibly talented, as in like above and beyond talented. Like every single person, from Angel Blue all the way to, you know, every single person. And it was something that all of a sudden I was like, all these people on stage that are singing down in their own right mind everywhere else, being that one person, but singing down all together. This is something to look at. This is something to watch. And just to be able to see the magic and feel the magic that would just occur. Like, we would just start singing things and it would take us back, like, oh, we sound good. Like, you know, just things where it's like, and to be also in that environment of having just in the environment where there was just excellence like all around. So it was something where, at least, then I say this for me, this is my own opinion, but like, I just kept more learning. And the thing was, it was like, you listen to somebody, you're like, ooh, I want to do that. I need to learn that. Let me talk to so-and-so. Everyone was so open too about having conversations and understanding and what they were doing and how to do this and that. So it was just kind of this big pot of just information and feeling one another, because the thing is, in the end, it's like there were some people who were new to the show, had never done it. Then there's some people who had done it a couple of times, but different production. This one was different because the Met had not done it in 30 years. Like that was a huge thing. And just to be able to walk through the doors, and even, and I say this, even administration and other people who actually worked at the Met were like, we haven't seen this much excitement and warmth and environment and just all of this just, good stuff in a while. Just
it got international. Yeah, it was international. Yeah. The feeling that you did, and you're speaking to us as Black folk. We create a family, no matter what, no matter where, exactly. Right? And we bring all folks within that.
Working Best was great. The thing is, now it's something where we want to be able to feel that in other areas as well. Again, like,
speak on it.
Right.
Speak on it.
It's so many other, I say this because I know for myself is that when I was younger, a lot of people were just like, you're too versatile, you're too versatile, you're too versatile. People don't know where to put you. Like they will, I've heard that a lot from a lot of teachers. And it was something where I was like, oh, okay. But I grew up on musical theater. Like I grew up on jazz. Like I don't want to give that up. But I also really love this art. I really love this music. I really love how my voice fits into it. I mean, and you see how all other types of genres of music are melding together and doing this and incorporating each other. It's like, I don't see why. Why not? Like, why not? I mean, everybody else gets the opportunity. Other races get the opportunity. Why do I have to just be straight in this one box? And that was, for me, a challenge, was because I say, like, as I slowly started my professional career, I was starting to be cast. The first professional role I ever had was actually the Queen of the Night. And I give that props up to Martia Rowland. She was my teacher who got me together in Colorado. Like, great. She was the first one. She's like, do this. This is where your voice is. Like, try this. And it was great. It opened the door. After that, it kind of just became Queens, and it moved into more of the like fantasy character, or the maid, or the comedic relief, because I'm a ham on stage. Like,
Star Trek.
Right, like it's fun. And I realized that, but after a while I was like, well, what about Pamina? Or what about ingenues? What about these damsel in distresses? Why all of a sudden am I always characterized as fantasy? Because you don't see me in something else, or what? I don't know. And so I'm hoping that an Opera Orlando is already above and beyond like with the notion of really showing representation, because it's kind of, and I'm not saying that, what companies put out there is, not good. Of course it's great. It's just something where it's kind of like, opera is also for the people. Performances are for the people. And if the people that are coming, I'm just preaching, if the people that are coming to your shows are of, different races and different, genders, are of different this or of different, all these, why can it not be shown on stage? That's all. Why does it have to always be kind of the same thing?
With that, Brittany, thank you so much. Looking forward to having you a part of more of this. And, thank you for all that you do, and looking forward to it. Let's talk with some members of the Representation Matters Planning Committee and Opera Orlando staff members about how and why this initiative came to be. Committee members Alecia DuPont, Sarah Purser, Brittany Renee, Nathan Granner, Mark Wright, Michelle Engelman, and staff members Gabriel Preiser and Beatrice Ramirez.
I am so grateful to have all of you here. Thank you so much for being here. Brittany, we'll start with you. Why is representation so important in the arts, and what does this committee particularly mean to you?
So thanks. Hey, Chef. Hey, everybody.
What up?
So representation, it's the awareness that there's other people like you. Representation just plays a huge part, more or less, not even for, I feel like, the performer on stage, but also for the community. I feel like as performers and as companies, as production, as people who are telling these old school stories, opera stories, or just any type of live performance, it's like people want to relate to these stories. They want to be actually relating to who they see. And if they don't necessarily see them, you know, especially younger audiences, they don't necessarily see them, how are they going to be able to relate to these stories and to be drawn in to opera or even to musical theater or any other type of art form? This community, I mean, Opera Orlando is already doing amazing, amazing things, but just to be able to, you know, sit and have conversations, open conversations about what it takes. Like I said, it's not just artists, it's not just performing artists, it's in every aspect of, you know, an opera company or in the performing arts.
I would just add that seeing things on the stage and talking about other people's stories rather than just the castle stories that we've seen for so long, or having those same stories be told by different people from different cultures and different ethnicities, those just happen to bring more people in. It's just how we can be more inclusive, and especially now with Black Lives Matter, how we can be inclusive with our Black performers and artists, ensemble members, administration people, and more importantly, our patronage as well. If we can all get a symbiosis going, not only can we serve our Black community, but we can serve our immediate community of immigrants in America that speak tons of different languages and have way, way, way different ways of expressing themselves and feels and all of that. It's a good thing.
Gabe serves as the executive director of Opera Orlando, who's been very supportive again of diversity and inclusion within the company, but also outwardly. Gabe, in leadership, you know, you are an exec, right? You made a decision to bring in folks around an issue and around a tough issue as well. How do other leaders in other companies, how can they step up? And what can we do better within Opera Orlando as well?
Sure, we can always do better. I think forming this committee was a very easy decision. It just kind of happened. It grew organically out of our wonderful board members, out of our wonderful staff members. We all just felt it was the right thing to do, and we all had that conversation at the same time. So I think you surround yourself with the right people. Having a diverse board is something that people talk about a lot, right? And it doesn't just happen. You can't just say, I'm going to have an Asian American member of the community on the board. I'm going to have a member of the Hispanic community put them on the board, because maybe they don't have a passion about opera, you know? And it takes a while to find those people that are going to be passionate about whatever your cause is, not just an opera organization, but any nonprofit organization. And they shouldn't just be there because they check a box, as it were, but because they're, one, passionate about what you're trying to do, and they're going to broaden your horizons. And I've been very grateful for my board members, my staff members that have broadened my own horizons. I think as a casting director, as a programming director, we have a responsibility to be open-minded in casting. I think Hamilton is a great example. Now that it's out on Disney Plus, you know, anybody can watch it. That is the definition of open-minded casting, right? A story told about our history by people from now. You know, we are such a diverse nation. Orlando is such a melting pot, and it would be a shame not to embrace that. So I've always tried to keep an open mind in casting. But then also I think it's the responsibility, again, of those casting and programming directors to be intentional, to program things such as The Secret River, which is about an African-American family. Or be intentional about programming pieces like As One, that's about the transgender experience, or set Carmen in Haiti, or set it somewhere specific where you're going to have a diverse cast. So we've tried to be intentional and at the same time be open-minded in our casting.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gabe. I'm going to go to your managing director. Not only is Beatrice a unicorn and can do all things, but Beatrice also is a performer, a mother, right? A person who has done a lot within the community. And as a performer, Beatrice, you get to go around and see different types of representation. But what has been your experience, and why is it important, again, to broaden what representation looks like in the arts?
There definitely needs to be more representation. I primarily am in orchestral groups, and in orchestras, at least in Orlando and Florida, it's predominantly white. It is changing. I'm seeing a lot more Black and Hispanic people. There's an orchestra I play with around Central Florida that is highly Venezuelan. I think a lot of people have been immigrating, and it's really wonderful to see that things are diversifying, that people are being put into groups together. I've grown up in so many predominantly white performing ensembles that it's just really nice people who look like me in different sections and performing together. And I'm just excited that it's continuing going forward, that it should be more diverse.
So I think what's so neat about this, and I've shared this story before, my introduction to Opera Orlando was through representation. This pen here serves, it says the 49. It was the Pulse tragedy that actually was my first month of me being a board member of Opera Orlando. And for a company like Opera Orlando, which was fresh and new at the time, step up and do a concert called One Voice Orlando, where folks from all over the country, pretty much all over the world, and came and gave of their talents. And this is when I knew, this is a company that I wanted to be a part of. But Opera Orlando got it from the beginning about representation. And so Opera Orlando tends to move and be in front of things, for community, right? And so, Alecia, I want to go ahead and ask you a question, have you chime in on this. As a fellow board member, as someone who was very much involved in our One Voice concerts the year after Pulse, why is representation important to you?
I'd like to, if anybody's talked with me, I like to synthesize things. And I saw a short quote that I thought, kind of encapsulates what I feel. And what that would be is, you can't be what you can't see, right? So I think all of us have a responsibility to make intentional and conscious choices so that we are not just viewing what's happening, that we are participants in what is happening, so that we can be participants in getting the outcome that we wish to have for our children and our children's children. I am at a point in life where I think about legacy building, and I think that we all have to be very intentional about the legacy that we leave. And I think it's actually really exciting, almost scary, that we really have an opportunity to be intentional about saying that Black artists, Black artistry in all scopes matters, and that we are going to be part of the solution to make sure that that representation is consistent and built upon, and that we open the door for others to join us in that process.
Wonderfully said, Alecia. Mark, I want to speak to you as a board member as well. This is our introduction. This is the first committee we're sitting on together, and I'm really excited for that. You dove in to be a part of this committee, a part of representation in particular, and as a new board member of Opera Orlando, what do you hope to see, and what do you hope to contribute to this?
Well, as you've already mentioned, I enjoy the fact that Opera Orlando is very diverse, and it has included everyone in the community, whether you're gay, whether you're straight, whatever your choice is, black, white, it has shown it on the stage. And that's one of the great things to be able to see. When I really got involved in opera as a whole, is because I actually saw someone who was an opera singer that looked like me. You know, I was singing in college, in the university, at Liberty University, and I got a chance to sing with Angela Brown. And Angela Brown,
she's a queen. That's what she is.
And Angela Brown was singing there, and I just gravitated to her. And from that day, she kind of took me under her wings, and she gave me instructions on how to, you know, put myself out there, how to get myself noticed. And it was something that really uplifted me by seeing her and seeing how well she had done in that. And so it was a blessing to be a part of that. And Opera Orlando brings that same type of energy by allowing us to see people of color on the stage. And I think it gives, you know, young people a lot of motivation and power to be able to see that.
I want to go to, you know, some of the staff of Opera Orlando who are represented here. First, I'm going to go to Sarah. There's a few things in the schools that are important, right? When we all were growing up, we remember a couple of things. We remember the teachers we absolutely loved. We remember the teachers that we didn't love so much, right? And we remember those folks that had that impact on us. But some of us here have something that's a unique quality as we're tied to each other. We saw teachers, and we remember the teachers that first looked like us. And as you are navigating through, you know, as you had with your education program, now with the Studio Artist program, you know, what does this mean to the programs that you're doing?
Actually, the Studio Artist program does a very large part of what we do is go into the schools. And so the work that I'm doing with Opera Orlando, I always think of it as being directly connected to and related to what's happening in our schools in Orlando. We specifically work very closely with OCPS, and we bring, and I know that you also work closely with students in OCPS. And the diversity in OCPS is so beautiful. You go into many classrooms and you see such a diverse population. And actually there's 35% of students in OCPS who are not white. And that's a very large group. And so when we bring these studio artists into the schools to get them excited about opera and classical music, I want them, just like we were talking about, to see themselves reflected in these amazing singers that we bring out. And so I just think that's so important. And, you know, as a white person, you know, sometimes I go in and I do look around and I think, I want to bring this experience to you. I want to give an experience to these students where they can see themselves reflected, and I can't do that. And so I love when we have studio artist auditions from people that come from all different backgrounds, and I want to be able to provide that more and diversify, you know, our cast and to show students that they can do this. This is for everybody. Music is for everybody, and classical music is for everybody, and specifically for the young people. You know, I want them specifically to grow up knowing that this is something that's accessible to them.
Oh, wonderfully said. I'm going to go to one more person. You know, just like a production manager, right? It's just like a production manager to get all of this together. There's been a person who's been working super behind the scenes to ensure that not only that we have the right people in the room at the right time, and that this committee is really pushing forward, but this is a huge passion for Michelle. And I just want to chat about that. Michelle, why is that?
For me, I would say growing up in mostly Black and brown neighborhoods as a person, I always thought, as I continued on in my life, that if I can bring along people that need a platform, that need an additional voice, I want to be able to do that. And I think in the world of production, I think in the world of classic singing on stage and in orchestras, we need to be cheerleaders and advocates for people who have the passion, because there are people who are not running in that direction. There are, you know, there's not a lot of thought put in doing that. There's not a lot of historical precedence. So if you can be a part of that, then that's one of the things I've always wanted to do and continue to do with being in the arts as a platform.
Thank you, Michelle. Nathan, I saw that you wanted to add something, and then I'll go to you, Alecia. Go ahead, Nathan.
Yes, the question about filling, say, an orchestra, someone asked me this actually as the marketing director of Long Beach Opera. I got a phone call. Someone said, "I don't want to be part of your organization. You don't have a diverse orchestra. And what are you going to do about that?" And so I asked around. I asked our orchestra manager, and the simple answer there was, well, there aren't that many African Americans or people of another color. I mean, obviously there are lots of different people that play in orchestras, but especially black people, it was very difficult. There just weren't a stable of people to go to. And Darrell Akon, our equity and diversity director, was like, no. And I was like, what? We were like, what? He's like, you got to go and be intentional and find the people. You can't just like look in a catalog and be like, not today. We'll move on. The intentionality for finding folks to diversify your ranks has to be a foot on the pavement, handshake kind of work. It has to be real close, or else you're just going to get the same old stuff. This adds to the color of our community. This adds to the depth of our art.
Alecia, go ahead.
Okay, 2 quick points. I have to go with Hamilton, Lovett, and can't say enough about how important it be that you are in the room where it happens, right? Because you need to have representation there when those decisions are being made, those creative decisions, the who's on the orchestra, all those things. We need people in the rooms where those conversations are happening. So that's one quick point. The other one is we can't lose focus on any good artisan is not just focused on where their audience is. They need to be focused on where is their audience going to be. And
come on,
that's so important that we focus on where's the audience going? Who do we bring to this new audience? Who do we seek out for this new audience?
And Alecia just took us to church in that moment. And what I love that you said is you bring impacting the most impacted folks at the table, right? And I love that Opera Orlando did this. It wasn't, hey, we have this idea, here's the framework, launch it. It was, hey, here's something we kind of want to do as an impacted person. Can we bring you to the table? What do we need to do to make this right? And I really, really appreciate that, because it's more than just saying we're going to do this. It's, I understand that I don't particularly represent that, and I need folks to help me represent that. Brittany?
I was just going to add on to Nathan and Alecia. Yes, you just took me to church in that moment. Great. It's crazy because a lot of people always have been asking, they're like, what can we do and how do we bring in this? And it's something where it's really just based off of that 5%, that extra awareness, because a lot of the times it's like when someone really is trying to search for somebody to fit into whatever, they'll find that person. The problem is that right now it's like we have, maybe in whoever's casting mind or production staff, it's like, well, I need this one person possibly to fit a quota, and it really shouldn't be that way. And then they choose from like 10. And I say, I'm sure Nathan was part of this poll as well, but in the beginning kind of all these discussions and the Black Lives Matter and the movement, like we as Black opera singers, somebody put out a poll and it was like, let's just see, maybe we're way off. Maybe there is only like, 10 or 20 who are really like, doing it. Well, let's just see. And we came up with 150. Just from that, it kind of was an awareness to us, let alone to other people, where it's like, here are 150. This is just Black opera singers. Like, what's going on?
It's a huge list. Yeah.
A huge list.
For folks who are watching this, and this is their first time hearing that there is a particular issue that needs to be pushed about representation, what do you hope they take away? What would you say a good first step for them to take to learn through this. Nathan, go ahead.
I think this might be kind of a si se puede kind of moment. We are told as children, all of us in America, that we can do this. You can be anything you want, anything you set your mind out to do, you can do that. And the promise of America has been, if you work hard enough, you can do it. And I think what we're trying to do is make that promise stick. So if people want to be an opera singer and they're a different color, it's not just being introduced to the art form, we're actually letting you be in the art form.
Thanks for being here with us today for Black Artists, Black Stories. This is Chevalier Lovett signing off. Please join us for our next #Representation Matters episode on Sunday, August 16th at 2 p.m. featuring Greg Baker for another installment of Black Artists, Black Stories. You can find out more information by liking Opera Orlando's Facebook page for the series schedule and update, and subscribing to Opera Orlando's YouTube channel for all archived episodes of the series and much more. Stay safe and keep singing.